For Cybercrime Radio, I'm Paul John Spaulding. Joining me today is Amit Chita, Field CTO at Mend.io. This episode is brought to you by Mend.io, whose mission it is to make application security frictionless for developers and scalable for security teams without compromise. To learn more about our sponsor, visit Mend.io. Amit, great to be speaking with you again.
Great to speak with you as well, Paul.
So today we wanted to talk about enterprise AppSec metrics. So Amit, let's jump right in. We still see companies potentially brag or panic about vulnerability counts. It could be either case. But why doesn't that tell us the full story?
So a mature organization today don't look at vulnerabilities anymore. It sounds like very weird that I say that, but they look at certain vulnerabilities, certain issues, and I see that the next gen of security teams, they have a policy. And this policy tells a story of what they allow and not allow to have and what is their true risk. And risk is different between different organizations. Not any security finding or vulnerability actually breaches your internal policy, right? Maybe you have a security vulnerability, but it's in an internal tool and there's no risk for someone exploiting it. Maybe it's a vulnerability that is not exploitable at all. Maybe it's in a dead piece of code that no one is using. So there's a lot of aspects that can go into a company policy on what you fix, on what SLA, right? Do I fix it in 2 weeks? Do I fix it in 2 months? So I see the security teams shifting to look at this policy instead, the violations of this policy, the breaches of the policy. And this is like a new terminology that is going on there. And I think that's the next thing. So even if I have 1 million vulnerabilities, right, how many of them are actually problematic for me, for my policy that I define?
And Amit, is that the metric you would use to examine if a company is improving their security over time? Or is there a larger thought process you want to lay out for us there?
There is a larger thing, but it all connects. So I usually recommend to the companies I work with to work with MTTR, mean time to remediate, which is basically a measure of how fast do you fix, but you don't want to measure it for everything. You want to measure it for the things that are important for you to fix. So let's say you define that this is my policy, this is the things that is important for me to stay on top of. Only for these things, I want to measure how fast do I fix this issue. And we want this number to go down over time because we know for attackers, the opposite number, which is TTE, time to exploit, is going also down, right? So we're in this race against hackers on who's better, faster, more efficient. So we definitely should measure ourselves by the same numbers.
Now, when we talk about executives and developers, I don't know if you feel the same, but in a certain way, couldn't it be said that they want different things from security data that they get or that they have different metrics? I mean, an executive might be reporting to the board, for example, whereas a developer is perhaps more in the weeds, really dealing with the day-to-day problems. So I'm wondering how we bridge the gap and kind of think about security from those two perspectives.
Yeah, so it's a really good point. I would even dare to say that most developers don't even care about security. And while there's security teams that really care about it, and then there's the people that need to present to the board, right, the results. So there's a huge gap there, and I think there's a lot of trust to be built between security teams to R&D teams. And having an accurate policy, like we mentioned, is part of it. Because if I come to a developer and I tell them, listen, you need to fix these 30 vulnerabilities, and they start to look into it and they find that most of these vulnerabilities are false positives, are not really a vulnerability, they're not really relevant. They lost the trust in the security process. So the next time you come with them with vulnerabilities, they're like, oh, most of them are usually spam, right? So they'll, of course, overlook the one real vulnerability that is hidden within. Now, when we have a well-defined policy within the organization that is narrow enough, but not too narrow, so only when there's a real important issue, a developer gets it, they know they need to handle it and they know it's really important. And this is the way you build trust and good communication and good process. But of course, it's very hard to get there. And I rarely see organizations that perfectly are there. And, it's something to strive for.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor.
Mend.io is the leading application security solution, helping organizations reduce application risk efficiently. Built for modern, AI-driven, and traditional development environments alike, Mend.io prioritizes what matters most so teams fix less, reduce risk faster, and deliver software with confidence. To learn more, visit www.mend.io.
And now, back to the podcast.
I'm wondering, Amit, if we can dive a bit deeper into this because, and again, you have to correct me if you feel like this framing is wrong, but do you think developers can sometimes feel a bit blamed by their security dashboards and all these, as you say, some could be potentially spam alerts? And I'm just wondering if you could dive a bit further, give us some more thoughts on how we can more perhaps fairly or equitably approach looking at all these alerts when it comes to developers as well.
Yeah, so like it's a big issue and developers are being spammed and what they want is less alerts. And most of the times they're right. And they're right because most of the alerts are really not truly exploitable vulnerabilities that it's something that like you can handle. But like I usually divide the companies I see into two categories. There's companies where the R&D is so much more important in the organization than the security in legal. It's usually startups, fast-paced companies, and like it's not that I think it's important, it's they think it's more important. So a security person won't have a lot of power within the organization. So they kind of ask from the developers to fix stuff, and they don't really have the power to tell them, listen, stop everything, stop the deployment, and fix it. This is one kind of organization, while there's the second kind, which usually in the financial sector or critical systems, banks, right, where the security will be super strong and they will be able to say, listen, everyone, you don't release this unless you fix any single vulnerability that we found here. And the developers might sit for like, I don't know, a month fixing vulnerabilities. So it's two different dynamics that we need to acknowledge. And each of them see it differently. And you see the people get used to it, right? Like the developers in the second kind of organization usually used to it that security is something that they have to do and that you have to do until the end. And they have no choice about it. While the companies where the security is not that strong, they see it as a recommendation, so like it's kind of negotiation on whether they're going to fix it or not.
We've talked in some previous podcasts here about AI and just how that's accelerating all kinds of development when it comes to applications and also open source apps too, and how those are changing now as we move again deeper into the AI craze, as it were. But software is going to just keep moving fast and it's only going to get faster. So, how do we make sure, as the good guys, so to speak, that we really keep up with the security flaws in all these applications and communicate those things effectively? Because right. During this episode here, we've been talking about these two different sides or these two different teams within a company that might not always speak the same language.
Yep. The way I see the solution is to remove the communication barrier at all and to close the gap with AI. So instead of a security person having to speak with a developer to fix a vulnerability, you want to be able, as much as you can, to let AI close the loop. AI agent won't give you a hard time because you ask them to fix a vulnerability. They don't have something that they prefer to do right now, so they won't procrastinate on that. And they might be sassy sometimes, but like they're not a human, right? So the more processes and security processes and remediation processes that you can close with automations, with AI doing the heavy lifting, maybe a developer just reviewing. That's the way I think to go instead of trying to solve the relationship between security and development.
Now, Amit, I'm wondering if you have any final takeaways for our listeners here. Anything else we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
There's one thing, there is a really special role that I see. There's a lot of companies that have like engineers that actually are really interested about security once in a while, and then they can turn these engineers into security champions within the team or the department. I think that's a great way to do it because you take someone who actually cares and likes security and responsible for the engineering. And that makes the communication better and the relationship better between security and R&D.
Amit, as always, a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Paul.
For Cybercrime Radio, I'm Paul John Spaulding. Joining me today was Amit Chita, Field CTO at Mend.io. This episode is brought to you by Mend.io, whose mission it is to make application security frictionless for developers and scalable for security teams without compromise. To learn more about our sponsor, visit Mend.io. And for more of our media, visit cybercrimemagazine.com.